Okay, we are getting good numbers in. That's excellent. All right. So obviously you're all got IBS and you need the low FODMAP diet. Perhaps just tell me what type of IBS you have. You know, there's the three kinds, the diarrhea, the constipation, and the mixed, where you swing between the two. There is actually a fourth kind that they don't talk about very much, and that's where your bowel movements are actually reasonably satisfactory, but you still have the other symptoms like the bloating and the gas, and pain, cramping, etc. So let's see, and you just have to put D, C, or M, just to keep it nice and easy. All right, we've got a D, somebody from Vancouver, Washington. Ah, that was my URL. All right, thanks, Jackie. Vancouver, Washington. Right, we have a C, another C. The constipation is the hardest one, I'm sorry to say. It's also my type. So I understand you well, because even on the low FODMAP diet, you do have to take care of your constipation almost as another creature. So those with the diarrhea, within a few days you can have results if you're doing it really accurately and you've got no other particular issues or triggers outside of the low FODMAP diet. But those with constipation, probably their bloating will go down quite quickly, but you will still have an issue with the constipation if you don't take that into account. And one of the things you must do is drink lots of water, which I'm going to do right now. All right, what's our time? It is time to start. So some of you are being very shy in the chat and not telling me things. Actually, just make sure you do have right at the bottom clicked on all panelists and attendees so that we all see this. SIBO with constipation. And just a little word here of warning about the SIBO, the only real SIBO test that they do, the hydrogen breath test, that has been proved to be inaccurate now. So it doesn't necessarily tell you the truth. But with SIBO, they'll put you on rifaximin. But if you've got constipation, you should be on rifaximin and neomycin together. If that solves your problem and your bloating goes, your diarrhea or constipation goes, then you know it was SIBO. But you still need to be on the low FODMAP diet to make sure it doesn't recur. But the very best way to find out if you've got SIBO is to do the low FODMAP diet. If it works, then if your bloating goes away with the diet, then you know you haven't got SIBO, because it wouldn't go away if you did have SIBO. So that's the cheapest and quickest way to work it out. There is a test for SIBO, but it's invasive, and they're very, very reluctant to do that without good cause. Right, somebody's here obviously for their husband, because the husband has D. Someone else with diarrhea as well. All right, excellent. Thank you for that. Now. All right, so some of you might actually not know who I am. I assume a lot of you do. If not, my name is Suzanne Perazzini, and I've had IBS all my life. And so I've never known anything else. And I actually do feel for those who get it later in life, because you know what it's like to be normal, and then you have this thrust upon you. I've never known anything else, therefore I don't have a grieving process to go through, and many of you will have to go through that grieving process for the lost you that was the person without IBS. You have to go through the stages of grief until you come to acceptance, and it can take some time. Anyway, my story. So I've had it all my life, and as a child, all I knew was that my sisters and I would go down to the orchard. We lived on a farm, and I'd eat the plums and the peaches and the stone fruit and be sick, and they wouldn't. So there was no real explanation for it, and nobody talked about IBS back then. But as I grew up into my teen years and then into my 20s, I did go to doctors about it, like most of you will have. And nobody said IBS to me until about a decade ago. So for a long time, I had no clue. They just told me to have more fiber because I had the constipation and eat more fruit and vegetables. And of course, we know that that's all really bad advice for those of us with IBS now. We do need to get our fiber right for constipation, but the fiber supplements are overloading us, and that gives us more bloating and more gas and more issues. We have to do it very slowly, calmly, building up the levels. Anyway, so I saw lots of doctors through the decades, and then about 6-7 years ago, I saw something on the internet about the low Fodmap diet, but I kept ignoring it because it was so complex. And it wasn't really spoken of as a medical diet back then. It was just something anecdotally that people were saying was helping them. So for about a year, I just kept searching for answers and ignored it. But one day, I looked a bit more deeply into it and realized that this actually could be the solution. And so it probably took about a year, because back then there was really nothing much about it, except, as I say, some anecdotal evidence that this diet was helping people. So I tried it. I didn't get it right, of course, like most of you don't get it right. And I played around with it and started to work out that there were other factors besides the FODMAPs, like the fat levels and the fiber levels. And over about a year, I got it right. And at that point, I already had a website that was documenting my journey with IBS and trying to find a solution. And once I discovered that diet and worked out that it actually worked, then I switched my website over to low FODMAP and IBS, and it just took off. The number of subscribers exploded, and then people started emailing me for help. And I was working full-time in a corporate job at that time. And even though I'm proud to say I answered everybody, I couldn't really give them the help that they needed. And so one day, after a very stressful few months at work in the real estate world, I went home for Christmas and never went back to the office. And I started a coaching program. And I sent it out to, by then I had a very large list of subscribers. I sent it out to them that I was going to do this program, and it filled up immediately. And I've never looked back since. So I now have different coaching programs, but that one was the 6-week one-on-one coaching program. That's still my main coaching program. All right, so I'm a trained nutritional therapist. I've done many courses on nutrition and the gut microbiome. And just recently, the Monash University, as you know, that's where the low FODMAP diet was created, was researched and created. They've come out with a course, actually a really in-depth, quite difficult course for people who want to be able to teach the low FODMAP diet, to be certified. And I must have been one of their first people to do that. So I've now completed that course as well. I've also had, I haven't counted them recently, but 600-700 people through the one-to-one program over the years, and with really, really good results on the whole from that. So that's me. That's what I do now. I coach the low FODMAP diet full-time. But I know how tough it is. And it's really tough to figure it out by yourself. I mean, you're so busy with work and kids and, I don't know, studying, life in general. And there's just no time to really focus in on this. And you do need to, because we know that it has to be done accurately, at least in the first part. The elimination stage has to be black and white. It has to be really accurate. Later, the shades of grey come in once you figure out what your triggers are. But that elimination stage, you can't waffle around, you can't play with it, you can't dabble in it. It has to be done right. One wrong food or one right food in 2 higher amounts or combinations, and you will have symptoms, and that will just confuse you like crazy because you won't be able to figure out which it is. And you won't know that till you've gone through the testing stage and you work out what your triggers are. So that accuracy is super, super important, and you just got to knuckle down and get it right. Anyway, let's get started, and I'm going to bring up my slide deck. Now this always takes a moment. I'm just going to put my chat over to my other screen. I've got 3 screens here, and I'm going to try and bring up the slides. As I say, it always takes a moment for me to get this right. All right, can you just tell me in the chat if you can see that, my first slide, which says how to create a customized low FODMAP meal plan. Just pop in the chat if you can see that, just to give me peace of mind. We're going to start off with what are FODMAPs. So again, a lot of you will know this, but it's an acronym. Each of the letters stands for something. So the F is for fermentable, the O is for oligosaccharides, which have 2 subgroups, the fructans and the, that should be fructans and the galacto-oligosaccharides. The next is disaccharides, and that's lactose. Monosaccharides, which is fructose, and is the A. P is the polyols, and they've got 2 subgroups, mannitol and sorbitol. And the S, of course, is just for the plural. Right, so that's what the FODMAPs are. But let's be clear here, FODMAPs are carbohydrates. Now, in our diet, we have 3 macronutrients, which are essential for survival. In other words, if we don't have one of these groups, we can die. So it's protein, as in protein meats. They also are in legumes and various other things as well. Fat and carbohydrates. Those are our 3 macronutrients. So FODMAPs are carbohydrates. So obviously we can't cut them out completely or we're going to die. We're going to be eating protein, meat and fat. And that's what dogs eat, or what dogs should be eating. In this modern world, they seem to be given all sorts of food, but they should be eating protein, meat and fat. But we're not a dog, and we've got a completely different digestive system. So it's about eating those that are lower in the carbohydrates, called the low FODMAP foods, and eating them in certain amounts and in certain combinations with other foods. All right, so let's see. Let's move on. I'm just going to give you a few meal plan rules before we go through an actual meal plan. And these things are just as important as getting the right foods. So 5 small meals a day. Now, why do we do that? We do that because we can't eat too much at once for 2 reasons. One reason is that we'd have too many FODMAPs in a larger meal. They just add up and cause you problems. But also, because we have to eat those small meals and we don't want to stretch our gut too far because our gut is hypersensitive, and if you stretch it, it's going to react. Other people's don't. Ours does. But we need the 5 meals because we need the nutrients. If you had 3 small meals a day, you'd never get enough nutrients, again, to keep you healthy, ultimately alive. So in order to get those nutrients, we spread them out over 5 meals. Someone else would put all those nutrients into 3 meals. We have to put them into 5 meals. Now, eat those more or less 3 hours apart. I mean, we can stretch that to about 2.5 to maybe 4.5. The reasoning behind that is that we know that a cleansing wave goes through our digestive system at somewhere around 2.5 to 3 hours. It's like a big broom going through and cleaning it out. So we want to wait long enough for that to happen. And why no longer than like 4.5 hours? Because by then digestion is completely finished. Your last meal has been digested, your gut is empty, and you're starting to accumulate gas in there. Now, this gas will not move along if there's not some more food that comes in to move it along. And we know that our gas accumulates differently to a non-IBS sufferer's gas. Their gas is distributed throughout the digestive system in little puffs of gas. And they just get rid of it during the day through little burps or passing wind down the other end. For us, it accumulates in pockets, and these can be quite large pockets that get trapped by feces, or just simply because there's no food coming along to move it along, because the food is what starts the muscles working in the gut. The gas doesn't. If anything, the muscles can cramp around it and make it really, really painful to have that gas. So we need to make sure first that the gas is not accumulating, and there are various different ways to do that. Excuse me. And I just had an article published by another big website, low Fodmap website, about bloating and how you cause that bloating and what to do about it, how to minimize that bloating. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want the gas to accumulate, so we eat and we push whatever little bit of gas there down. We get the muscles moving and we push it down. If we've let a large amount accumulate in a big pocket, then that, when it does get to the end, can come out quite explosively. So it feels like you've got way more gas than anybody else, but we actually know that we have the same amount of gas as a non-IBS sufferer. They've tested this. We don't have more. It's just it comes out all at once and seems like a lot. Whereas they're passing it all day, as I said, we don't. We pass it less often and more explosively. All right, moving on to the next one. So for the same reason, have breakfast within 30 minutes of getting up, because you've been fasting overnight, and that's fine. That's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be eating anything in the middle of the night. Doesn't matter if you feel hungry or not. No eating in the middle of the night. You're fasting. You get up, you eat. You want the gas that's accumulated, and not too much will accumulate while you're lying down, but the minute you get up and start moving around, you're talking, you're swallowing air more, life takes over, there's a bit of stress, so the air goes down. We want to get that gas moving before it can accumulate in the pocket. We need to get some food in. And we need to get breakfast, your full breakfast. Do not get up and have a cup of coffee. Worst thing possible. First, the caffeine is a gut irritant, and it's undiluted by food. So you're getting the full power of that caffeine, and that's going to set you up really badly for the day. You can have a weak coffee or tea with your breakfast, but not before it. You get up and it's your breakfast that you eat, first of all, and all the food that you eat for that first meal is eaten all together. Don't spread it out like I've seen some clients do, where they get up, they have their coffee, then a bit later they have a banana, then they do a few things, maybe go to the gym, come back, and then have their breakfast. Really bad news doing it like that. You get up, you have your breakfast, set yourself up for the day. Next one. And at the other end of the day, leave 3 hours before bed so that most of your digestion is finished and you won't have a disturbed night's sleep. Because if you're still digesting while you're in bed, you're probably going to have a very restless night. And also, especially if you've got reflux, and we know that 80% of people with IBS have got reflux, the lying down after eating is going to make that much, much worse. So leave 3 hours, have your dinner, no more snacking after dinner, which is actually extremely common. Most of my clients really fight to be able to keep their snack after dinner. No snacking after dinner. There we go. No snacking after dinner. Right, just a few other things. No smoothies. You see, we're just bombarded these days on the internet with all this healthy way to eat. And I tell you what, 99% of it does not apply to us. And I don't even agree with it for everybody. A lot of this just doesn't work at all because we're flooding our bodies with sugar. So we definitely cannot not have smoothies. First of all, because we usually put too many fruits and vegetables in a smoothie, so it's high FODMAP. But even if you get that right, even if you put just half a banana and 5 strawberries, for example, so that's low FODMAP. When you make a smoothie, the volume increases quite considerably, and that volume is air. So we don't want to be drinking air. That will create a big pocket of gas in our digestive system, and we'll get all those problems of gas, bloating, cramping, etc. So no smoothies, doesn't matter what the internet says, no smoothies. And I've seen a lot of low FODMAP websites encouraging you to have smoothies. They just haven't thought it through completely. They'll be telling you possibly the right combinations, hopefully, but they haven't thought through that factor of all that air that you're pumping into your body. Now, along these lines, no juicing. We know that we can have half a glass of orange juice and 1 glass of cranberry juice, but no other juices. And this again is because obviously when you juice something, you're focusing a whole lot of FODMAPs into 1 glass or even half a glass, and it's just too many FODMAPs. But another reason not to juice, and this is for the population in general, and I know there's this NutriBullet thing or whatever, and juicing is recommended again on the internet, although there's finally a backlash. It took a while. Because when you juice and you take out the fiber, you flood the body with sugar that the body can't cope with, and the pancreas goes into panic mode and lays the excess sugar down as fat. So you're never going to get slim by juicing, by the way, because that's the body's way of coping with it. But at a certain point, the pancreas can't even do that anymore, and that's where you become pre-diabetic and eventually diabetic, because you've just got all the sugar swimming around your body. If you have fruit with fiber in it, the fiber slows down the absorption of the sugar, so the body doesn't see it as being flooded and nothing gets laid down as fat. So stick to your 2, possibly 3 fruits a day spread out, and that's how you get your juice actually in the fruit. And all right, no, that's enough on that. Anyway, so no NutriBullets, no juicing, please. And no processed food. Processed food is food that's got more than 1 ingredient, just to simplify it. I'm sure there's a more technical explanation, but for me, that's what processed food means. We should be eating single ingredient foods, vegetables, fruits, meats, etc. Most processed food will have chemical additives in it to make it last longer, look better, taste better, hold together. Especially foods without gluten in it can crumble quite easily. So they put chemicals to make sure that it resembles a food with gluten. Now, these chemicals increase the hypersensitivity of the gut, and our gut is already super hypersensitive with that issue between the brain and the gut. Our brain sends inappropriate messages to the gut and probably vice versa. So we do not want to increase that hypersensitivity, so we do not eat chemical additives, or actually natural additives as well. The Monash University has come out and said they also can be gut irritants. So if you shop around the outside of the supermarket, you're pretty safe where all the fresh food is, and you go into the middle just for things like flour and salt and sugar, those basics, which are all 1 ingredient foods. You might need to go in just to get some crackers, but again, find those that have no additives. My rice crackers have got only brown rice and oil in them, so that is okay. It's still a processed food, but it's got no additives, either natural or chemical, in there. So that's what you're looking out for. All right, and no bread on the elimination stage. This you can loosen up later, but why do I say no bread? I say no bread because most of it you're going to go to the supermarket and buy, and that's going to be full of additives, chemical and possibly natural, full of chemicals. And that's going to do your gut no good at all. And a lot of the more healthy breads are too high in fiber for us and will make us bloat. Obviously, you're going to look for gluten-free bread. But I have to emphasize that gluten-free does not mean low FODMAP. There are many foods that are gluten-free that are high FODMAP. And in particular with bread, things like soya flour, almond flour, coconut flour, they're all high FODMAP. So gluten-free does not equal low FODMAP, and until they bring out a chemical-free, additive-free, low FODMAP bread and low fiber bread, you shouldn't really be playing around with them too much, especially in the elimination stage of the diet. The only exception to this is spelt sourdough bread. And this you'd have to find probably a little bakery that makes the sourdough bread in the traditional way over 2 days. They don't use any yeast, they use the fermentation, the natural fermentation of the wheat to cause the rising of the bread. And because that fermentation has happened outside the body, it won't happen inside the body, and that's why that's a safe bread to eat. But beware that most of the supermarkets and shops might call it sourdough, but they've sped up the process with yeast. So if you see yeast as an ingredient or any other additives, do not touch it. As I say, you've probably got to find a nice little bakery. And in that case, yes, you can have some if you've got IBS with diarrhea. Do not have it if you've got IBS with constipation, because it will be constipating. This is during the elimination stage. Later, once you know your triggers, you can play with all these things. Most people can tolerate some wheat, by the way. Again, it's something that's villainized out there. Most of us can tolerate a certain amount, and it's always about amounts. I can have 1 slice of white bread. I wouldn't have a bread with lots of fiber in it, absolutely not. And that 1 slice of white bread, even that can tend to constipate me, but I take other measures to counterbalance it. But I want to get some wheat into me because wheat's a really good prebiotic, and we are low in prebiotics on the elimination stage of the low FODMAP diet. So if there is something you can tolerate, even only at a certain amount, then don't cut it out. Same with lactose. Only 25% of people with IBS have a problem with lactose, and it's about amounts. I can have half a glass of milk, not a full glass, and I actually count that as not having a problem with lactose, because then I can eat all the cheeses, I can have some cream, just got to watch the fat levels in it, and yogurt. So it's about finding that level for you as an individual. Do not cut out dairy if you don't have to. It's really nutritious. And dairy milk, even lactose dairy milk, is far more nutritious than, for example, almond milk, which has 5% almonds in it and a lot of chemicals. Rice milk, hemp milk, none of them have very much nutritional value in them. If you do have a problem with the casein in dairy, which is the protein, then yes, you will have to cut it out. In that case, make sure you get a calcium fortified alternative milk like the almond, rice or hemp milk. All right, that sounded like a lot of talking to me, but let's move on. So let's have a little look at what constitutes a balanced meal. So a balanced meal consists of a protein, that can be a protein meat, or other proteins like nuts, or the permitted beans, seeds, etc. Eggs, cheese, obviously they're all proteins. So you need a protein. You need a grain like quinoa or polenta or rice, or a starchy vegetable. And by starchy, I mean the ones like potatoes, sweet potatoes, pumpkin, plantains, what else? Turnips, parsnips. That's what I call a starchy vegetable. So you're getting some of that starch. Then have, again, what I call a low starch vegetable, more like a spinach or a zucchini or a carrot, fennel, radish, snow peas, etc. Always low FODMAP, of course. So that there is a balanced meal for every single one of those 5 meals, not just for like dinner and lunch, possibly, but every single one. Let's see what I've got next. Okay, and 2 fruits a day. So why do we need this balance of meals at every single meal? It's because the more starchy foods, like the grains and the starchy vegetables, the carbohydrate, gives us quick energy, and then it drops away quite quickly as well. So it's good for a shot of energy. But we need the protein, which kicks in a little bit later, just as the energy from the carbohydrate is dropping off, the energy from the protein kicks in, and it will last for about 3 hours. And again, that's why we then eat again, because we do not want to get hungry. We absolutely do not want to get hungry, because then we reach for the wrong foods. We have a powerful survival instinct that makes us reach for fatty, sweet food, because that's going to keep us alive. The fat, which is like the protein, gives us lots of long-lasting energy, and the sweet food will give us that quick kick of energy. And that's why we instinctively go for something like a cake with cream on top, because we're getting the sugar and we're getting the fat in the cream. So we need this balance to make sure you don't get hungry in between your meals, so you don't go to McDonald's and get takeaways. Right, 2 fruits a day, yes. Just spread them out, just in case one of your big triggers is fructose. 8 glasses of water a day for all types of IBS, but in particular those with constipation. Now with water, never gulp it down all at once. Don't go, oh, I haven't had enough water today, and drink a full glass of water. That's going to bloat your stomach out and you're going to be in trouble. So sip a glass with each meal. We know now that it doesn't dilute the digestive juices, but it actually helps the food go down. But sipping, not gulping. And then have a glass in between each meal. But I am going to want you to have the equivalent of 2 glasses of milk a day for your calcium needs. So at least one of those glasses of water, substitute it for a glass of milk, and that works out that you get 8 glasses of water and 1 glass of milk if you do the maths. If you're having 5 glasses with your meals, and there are 4 gaps in between, which is 9, and one of those is going to be milk with a meal. I hope that was clear. You'll be getting your other calcium from yogurt, which you'll see once we start to make the meal plans up, yogurt and cheese. Right, now we're going to start the actual meal, breakfast. And this is, I'm just putting 7 a.m. because I'm going to show you the spacing, but obviously your day will be completely different. If you get up at 6:30, you're eating at 7. If you're getting up at 5:30, you're eating at 6, and so on, or within that 30 minutes anyway. And here we go with our breakfast. And I've separated this into constipation and diarrhea just for the breakfast, because I want those with the constipation to get a hit of fiber in the morning so that their bowels are encouraged to go to the toilet afterwards. We really want to create a routine of going to the toilet after breakfast, so that that's done and dusted and you can go about your day, go to work or whatever it is you do. So let's have a look through the constipation one first. I'll put oats in there because they're high fiber. Not everybody tolerates it, but it's not too bad for those with constipation. I do not recommend them for those with diarrhea, by the way. That's too much fiber for you. Constipation, 1/4 cup. If you look up the Monash app, there's all sorts of different oats and it gets very confusing. So I just say to my clients, stick to a 1/4 cup. Doesn't matter what oats they are, a 1/4 cup will keep you safe. Now with those oats, put a tablespoon of chia seeds, preferably soaked in water overnight, or lactose-free milk. And that just makes them more digestible. But if you forget, just sprinkle them in with your oats. It's better to have them, even though they're not soaked, than to miss them out. Because what we need with constipation is consistency. Get your fiber to the right level and then stay there so that you don't have any problems with your constipation. And I've got a small kiwi because kiwi is really good for constipation. It's a mild laxative. And then I've just to give you variety, I've given you one small kiwi because we can have two small ones, but instead 5 raspberries. So that's half the allotted number because we can have 10. So together it makes a full fruit. With your oats, have lactose-free milk and maybe 4 tablespoons, it's up to you, of lactose-free, sugar-free yogurt on top. So you've got a little bit more of your dairy coming in there. Now do make sure it's sugar-free, it doesn't have any fruit, definitely no inulin. And in the US, I recommend Green Valley Organics. And I know in Australia, they've got Liddell's, which is pretty good. Now you're going to see a carrot sitting there and think, wow, how does that fit in with all of that? Well, no, I'm not telling you to put a carrot in with your oats. I'm telling you, because that is your low carb vegetable. I'm telling you to eat the carrot while you're preparing your meal. All right? I mean, if you want to grate a carrot into there, probably would be all right. You have carrot and carrot cake, so it could work. But when you get up, just peel your carrot, start eating it while you're putting your oats and your chia seeds together and creating your breakfast. So here, remember that balance was protein, 1 grain or starchy vegetable, and 1 low starchy vegetable. So here the oats is your grain, your carrot is your low starchy one, and you've got one of your 2 fruits for the day, and your protein is the milk and the yogurt. If you found that you weren't quite lasting until your snack, which will be at 10, then just add a little bit more protein in there, maybe some protein meat from the night before. If you've had chicken or something like that, just have a bit of that randomly. Don't put it in your oats. Now, cup of wheat tea or coffee, you're going to have 1 a day. All right, and that's because I'm being kind, because they both have caffeine, and caffeine is a gut irritant, and they will cause reflux as well. But make sure that you have it with your meal, as I said, just to dilute the effect of the caffeine a bit, and keep it as weak as you can tolerate. If you go from 5 cups of coffee or tea a day down to this, you're going to have some withdrawal symptoms. You're actually going to get headaches and probably feel fairly horrible for a little while. The headaches might last for up to a week, depending on your dependency on caffeine. But this is a really good thing to do, believe me, if you can get through it. So diarrhea, instead, we're just going to make a few changes. We don't have to change everything, but instead of the oats, have maybe some rice flakes. You can only have 1/4 cup, but that will be more binding rather than loosening, which is what you want with the diarrhea. And I've given you 10 blueberries instead of the kiwi fruit, because you don't want the laxative effect, and half an unripe banana, because bananas are kind of binding, a bit like the rice as well, hence those choices. And then it's the same lactose-free milk, some yogurt, and the carrot, and the tea or coffee if you must. If you can do without them, just a glass of water. Let's move on. Morning snack, so 3 hours later, 10 o'clock, more or less. 10 walnuts, that's your protein. I've just chosen walnuts. It could be any nuts, it could be something completely different. It could be peanut butter or some cheese. Again, chicken left over from the night before, why not? And then I've given you a variety of vegetables because we're trying to get in as many different types of vegetables each day to get those nutrients into you. And one way to think of this is that the different colors give you different nutrients. And even though here we've got snow peas and cucumber, which are both green, the cucumber's got white in the middle, which will be different again. So I've obviously split it down to smaller amounts because you're having the 3. So 2 snow peas instead of 5, which we can have, 2 slices of cucumber instead of half a cup, half a radish instead of 2 radishes. So that's your less starchy vegetable, walnuts for your protein, and 10 rice crackers is your grain. Now we can actually have 20 or more rice crackers, but I don't know anybody who can eat that many at a sitting. So I've just put 10 there. I personally wouldn't probably eat any more than 4 or 5. That's up to you, but just know that there's quite a high upper limit for those. Why do I say rice crackers and not some other crackers that might be low FODMAP? Only because you can get rice crackers without the additives. Like I said, mine have got the brown rice and the oil. If you can find a low FODMAP cracker without the additives, then by all means use that. And here I've put in yogurt 1 glass of lactose-free milk a day. Again, we're looking not just at the nutrients, but in particular at the calcium, getting that in. So that's what you have at 10 o'clock. And then along comes lunch at 1 o'clock. And again, this is a suggestion. I mean, if you're going to be going to work, you're probably not going to be doing this. But my very best suggestion for those who go to work, and this is what I do every single day, is have leftover dinner. I make sure there's an extra helping of dinner, put it aside, Glad wrap on the top. That's sitting there waiting for me. At the moment, I've got a risotto I made last night sitting in the fridge, which I'll heat up. I don't have too much trouble with resistant starch, otherwise that would probably not be a good idea with rice. Anyway, just a suggestion here. An omelette with an egg, there's your protein, half a cup of diced zucchini, your less starchy vegetable, and a cook of sliced just a medium-sized potato. You could have a bit more, but you're not wanting to eat too much in a meal, or you're going to bloat your stomach. So again, if you've got no problem with resistant starch, and that is only a few people who have that, by the way, then you could have a potato from the night before that you've kept. Slice it up and put it in that omelette. And that's a completely balanced meal, glass of water with it. But I do recommend that leftover from dinner, just for simplicity. Afternoon snack, 4 o'clock. Now we've got a pot of lactose-free, sugar-free yogurt. You had a little bit in the morning, now have a pot of it, and this is your protein for this meal. Again, if you needed to beef that up, just have another protein with it, maybe a little bit of peanut butter. You could even stir into the yogurt. And 10 rice crackers, I've already explained why I've got that there. A cup of baby spinach. That's your non-starchy vegetable, but again, substitute it with whatever you want. Half a cup of zucchini, some okra, up to you. And half a cup of cantaloupe as your second lot of fruit for the day. See how I've kept it away from breakfast? It's in the afternoon snack. You could just chop that up and put that in the yogurt, which would give you a little sweetness, since most of you are probably used to yogurt with a lot of sugar in it. And a pot of yogurt can have up to a tablespoon of sugar in it, which is just way too much sugar for us at once. We can have sugar, and it's preferable in the fruits, but we can't have too much, or it stops being absorbed and goes off down into the bowel and ferments down there. So get your sugar from the fruit and put that into the yogurt and sweeten it that way. Glass of water as well. Dinner. So dinner obviously can be a recipe. I've kept this nice and simple. A fillet of chicken. We know that chicken has got no FODMAPs in it. Just make sure it doesn't have the skin and fat on it, because fat's a gut irritant. Nothing to do with FODMAPs though. But there you could have some steak. Just be careful if you've got reflux, small amounts of the red meats. Could be a fillet of fish. White fish preferably, but it's quite nice to have salmon maybe once a week for the omega-3, but it is a very fatty, oily fish, and you would have to have small amounts of it, maybe 2 ounces, kind of 60 grams might be the maximum before it becomes too high in fat for us. So your chicken's your protein, then you've got a grain, a cup of cooked quinoa, could be rice, could be polenta, but also there, instead of the quinoa, you could have half a cup of sweet potato, half a cup of pumpkin, one of the more starchy vegetables. So they're kind of interchangeable, that grain starchy vegetable, but make sure you have some of each in the day, like a mix. of them. And a cup of broccoli, that's your low starchy vegetable. Again, whichever one you want. And if you wanted to have 2 together, half the amounts. If you wanted to have 3 together, a third of each of the amounts. Now this here, you could cook a stir fry with it if you wanted to. You could just heat a little bit of oil, just a little bit in a wok, maybe grate some ginger in there, put in some cumin, some spices, if you don't have reflux. If you've got reflux, just stick with the ginger, that will be fine, it doesn't cause reflux. And then chop up the chicken, put that in. Meanwhile, cook the quinoa. Just cook it, steam it, or boil it, or whatever. And chop up the broccoli, put that in with the chicken. Once the quinoa is cooked, drain it and put it into the wok and just mix that in there and toast it a little bit. It's just nicer like that, with that little bit of oil on it, toasting it. At that point, you could get some soy sauce. We can have up to a tablespoon. I normally have less than that, but just put that in while it's all cooking up together. And that will give it some really nice flavor. And just check the seasoning, but often the soy sauce is enough salt. And together with that, have a glass of water. That there is your last meal of the day. As I said, no snacking after that. So make sure that is a really good substantial meal from the point of view of have the maximum chicken that you can according to the health guidelines. No problem from the Fodmap point of view, but the health guidelines say around about 4.4 of protein meats, which is about 125 grams. So do have the full amount just to make sure that your energy lasts until you go to bed. All right, so this can come right down to this kind of a template that I've described for you. It will simplify your life. Obviously, it's changing the way you live your life and the way you've done it until now. You've got to break some really bad old habits and create some new habits. But once those new habits are created, this will be so simple to follow. Now, just before we go on to the Q&A, where you can ask me questions about your meals, I just want to tell you about my new book, which, of course, I'm very proud of. And you've probably seen me telling you in the groups and on my Facebook page. But it's called the Low Fodmap 6-Week Plan and Cookbook. Now, this book has everything that I've learned over these last 6 or 7 years of being on the low Fodmap diet myself, of all the studies that I've done, all the courses I've done, and on top of that, on having run my low Fodmap program for, I don't even know how long now, 5 years maybe, and I've had so many clients. I think I mentioned 700 maybe clients through this, and I've learned a heap from them as well. So it's all in this book. You get, in the first part of the book, let me just see, I think I've got, yes, I've got, that's the contents page. In that first section, if you can see my cursor here, it's all about low FODMAPs and IBS and how it all kind of works. And there's a section here called Plan to Succeed, and that's got pages and pages of tips on how to do that and strategies. But this second part is my exact program that I put my 6-week clients through, the one-to-one clients. It's exactly what I put them through. So there are meal plans, the diary pages, there's 100 recipes, and I'll show you some pictures of those. I created them all one by one and tested them all, obviously, and ate them all. You also, with each week, you've got information on how to implement the diet into your life, like how to travel, eat out, how to work with it, how to deal with family and friends. There's also, at the end of each week, there's a case study, just to kind of inspire you to keep going when the going gets tough. And this program takes you right through the elimination, the reintroduction, to create that final diet. By the end of the book, if you've followed it accurately, you've got a final diet, and you'll know exactly what your triggers are. So that's where you can buy it. See that link at the bottom? strainsofmylife.com/lofodmap book. Afterwards, when I come off these screens, I'll put that into the chat. I just can't get at it now, so that you can pick it up easily. So that's where you buy the book. The book's available internationally, all over the world. It's still on pre-order at the moment, but I know those who pre-ordered early on have already got their book. So pre-order doesn't mean you've got to wait to the publication date. They send it out anyway. So it's the same as buying it after the publication date. But on the publication date, it then goes out into bookstores. But at the moment, you can buy it, as I say, in Australia, the UK, the US, and all over. Let's see what's next. Oh, so this was just to show you, like, week 3, how it starts. So it's called Stay the Course, Getting Ready for Testing. So you're still doing the elimination, but in this stage of the diet, you should be symptom-free, and you're just psychologically getting ready to do the testing. And here's some of the recipes. I popped them all together. So you've got a hamburger, you've got some little chocolate meringue tarts. This is all low FODMAP. Then I think they're the spinach or zucchini and cheese muffins, the enchiladas at the bottom, a quiche, and an omelette. Nice and simple to make for dinner or for lunch, like was in the meal plans. Here's just a few more. There's a delicious moist cake on the left. Those are gnocchi, spinach gnocchi with a tomato sauce in the middle, and a risotto like I had last night. All right, just to let you know, I always want to give a little bit more away. So if you pre-order the book before the 13th of February, which is just next week, you receive an invitation to one of 4 complimentary group coaching sessions once the book is released. Now, a lot of you have already done that and let me know, and you're in the list already, but you just need to send me proof of your purchase by emailing me. I've got several email addresses, but that's one of them, lowfodmapcoach@gmail.com, and then you're in. These are going to be, because there's 4 of them, these are going to be nice, smallish groups where you're all going to get a chance to talk. It won't be like this. This is a training session, a webinar. The coaching sessions, we're all going to be live on together where we can see each other and talk. You can cross off your video so we don't see you if you want to, and even your microphone. You'll have complete control. It's done in a different way to this, so that we're all there in the room together, and I'll give you chances to talk and ask your questions and so on. All right, so now it's question time, and just make sure that you've got that link, but I'll put it in the chat. I'm going to come out of sharing my slides so you can see me again. Let's just see how we go here. All right, so hopefully now you can see me, but I just want to get rid of this. There we go, and get that down and out of the way. I've got lots of screens all over the place here. Now I just want to bring this up so I can get those links and put them in the chat for you. So this is where you can purchase the book. Well, you go there and then you choose where you want to purchase it, depending on what country you're in. So there goes the link to the book, and I will just put my email address if you need to ask me about anything, or if you want to send me proof that you've purchased it because you want to be in the group coaching session. And I'm just sticking that one in there as well. There we are. I think I've been quite efficient with that. Now, questions. Oh, we've got way more people in here now. Oh, you've all come. Oh, that's nice to see you all. So I'm going to bring up the questions, and I'm going to start answering them. All right. And just make sure you're putting your questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. I will have a little look over at the chat box. Like, I'm just looking over at the chat. Sorry about that. I'm distracting myself. So make sure you're putting your questions in the Q&A. Put your cursor over the bottom of the screen. You'll see Q&A. That's where you put them. Will it be possible to come back and watch this? I need to cook dinner with Robin. Yes, I have remembered to record it, and I'll be sending out the recording to all of you who have registered, and possibly out to my subscribers, but definitely to those who have registered. Someone is asking, fruit and veggies can be eaten together? Absolutely, they can be eaten together. Now, I didn't talk too much about stacking. Obviously, I was talking about it when I was saying if you want to have 2 vegetables, cut them in half. But we can't get too carried away with this, especially with, there are certain foods like the leafy greens, spinach, lettuce, etc., that we know that we can actually eat more than what they tested. When they tested a certain amount, which was normally a cup, they didn't really find FODMAPs in there. That doesn't mean there's no FODMAPs in spinach or lettuce. Of course there are. All fruits and vegetables have got FODMAPs, they're carbohydrates. It's just at the level they tested, they didn't see them. And they are imagining that you can have quite a bit more than that. But at a certain level, you would hit the FODMAPs. So again, and also because we can't eat too much food at once or we're stretching our gut, just kind of stick to those amounts on the Monash app to be really safe. By the way, with my book, I could not put a food chart specifically in there because that is copyright to Monash University, and they don't mind us having them on our websites and our blogs, but they don't want them in published books. So I couldn't actually do that. So use the book together with your Monash app or your little Monash booklet, and then it will kind of make a lot more sense. I wish I could have put one in there, but it was absolutely forbidden. Not keen on drinking straight lactose-free milk flavoring. No, I get asked this a lot. While you're on the elimination stage, we're only talking about being really strict for this 2 to 3 weeks that you're on the elimination stage. Then you can test all sorts of things and test your flavorings and see if you get away with them. But we're trying to find your triggers as quickly as possible, so you need to be strict while you're doing that. So no flavorings, but if you don't like to drink 1 full glass, break it up and have half a glass with each snack, for example, or even a quarter of a glass or cup. So just find ways to manage to get the calcium in. Later, you know, if you find, for example, that fructose is not a trigger, then putting some maple syrup in there is not going to be such a big issue for you. Just be careful for these few weeks. It's a few weeks out of your whole life to be really strict and get the results. All right, should a packet of instant gluten-free oatmeal be eaten in 2 sittings? I ate a whole pack and it made my tummy cramp up. As I said really clearly, 1/4 of a cup of oatmeal. Instant, doesn't matter what. 1/4 of a cup. And I'm sure a packet was way more than that. That would have made me run to the toilet crazy with the fibre, and my stomach would have bloated like mad. So 1/4 of a cup, no more. And gluten-free does not matter. Remember that. Gluten-free is not low FODMAP. Gluten is the protein in wheat. We don't have a problem with protein. We have a problem with carbohydrates, which are the fructans in wheat. So we do not need to look for gluten-free. So yes, I'm sure that made you pretty sick. Next question. The meals seem very small. I have a 16-year-old boy. He's 6'2", needs more food than me. I have had pro athletes on my program, in particular a long distance runner who used to run across deserts, and he had IBS with diarrhea, poor beggar. Anyway, they didn't lose weight and they trained and they had no problems at all. What you have to do though is, instead of like in the snacks having like the rice crackers, you've got to beef that up and make sure that they're having the 5 small meals a day equally weighted all the way through. So my athletes have a cup of rice or a cup of quinoa instead of the rice crackers, and they might go a little bit higher with the protein amounts. but make sure that he's getting the full amount with every meal. And I don't think he should have an issue because, as I say, the athletes on my program haven't had an issue. But think of it as 5 equally weighted meals, whereas normally for most of us, our snack is a little bit lighter. What have we got here from Lara? What about Baker's Delight low FOD? Now, I don't know that in particular. Look at the ingredients, make sure it's got no chemicals in there. It's already said it's low FODMAP, so you don't have to worry about the gluten-free flours that are not low FODMAP, but you do have to worry about the chemicals. Just check. And if you've got IBS with diarrhea, test the slice, see how you go. As I say, those with constipation during the elimination stage, avoid it completely. Next question. Can we get a copy of the slides? Oh, I don't know about that. How would I do that? You do get the whole recording again, and then once you've got the recording, you can stop it and you can take a screenshot or just write down what was on the slides. Maybe that's a solution with a bit of luck, Jim. I know what you mean, because you want the plan, the meal plan. So maybe that's a good idea to take a screenshot as you go through the recording. All right, this person in New Zealand, is there a protein powder available here that is low FODMAP? I don't really recommend protein powders. Again, normally they're put into like milk or water and shaken up, and you're going to get all that gas and air in there. There's a really good article, though, on Patsy Katsos's website. She's one of the ones that I recommend. That's Patsy, P-A-T-S-Y-C-A-T-S-O-S. On her website, if you just go into her search and put protein powder, I think it is, an article will come up and she analyzes them and will tell you which ones are the safest, so that you can do a bit of research yourself on that one if you need them. But if you're eating protein at every one of your 5 meals, you don't need any protein powder. My husband's an athlete. He's a competing mountain biker, and he doesn't eat anything like that. He does have some terrible looking stuff that he has when he's actually doing the race. That for sure is high FODMAP, but the actual protein powders during our normal life, no, because we balance our meals out, and he gets plenty of protein. He eats a lot, by the way, about 4 times what I eat. Elaine in the UK, did you say yeast and bread is constipating? No, it's not the yeast. Yeast is low FODMAP, no problem with it. It's the actual flours that are constipating. And because we can't have the more high fiber ones, because then that just bloats us up, we have to have the white breads, and they are constipating, yes. Any thoughts on digestive enzymes? Yeah, I mean, it's a question I get a lot. I certainly don't take them. I tell my clients to stop all supplements, including digestive enzymes, on the elimination stage, because everything that goes in your mouth counts and could be affecting your gut. So we don't want any complications like that. You can always test them later. You know, to get the digestive enzymes right for our gut with IBS, it's so hard. It's the same with probiotics. How can they guess what you as an individual are low in? They can't. And there's no consistency in the testing that they've done between your gut and my gut and the next person's IBS gut. We're all over the place. So they can't create a probiotic that works for all of us, and they probably can't create the digestive enzymes either. But by all means, once you're symptom-free, you've done your testing, you've got your final diet, test it and see if it improves anything. If it does, keep taking them. If it doesn't, then why pay for it? What is a rice cracker? Oh, I should go and get one, but they're just little round crackers made out of rice, very thin, very crispy. You go into the supermarket and look for rice crackers, or ask the person in there what a rice cracker is. Are the plans from slideshow in your book? The book has meal plans in it, very detailed meal plans. and obviously it tells you about the whole balance that I put in the slideshow as well. But not exactly those ones I put there, but different meal plans in the book. And you get 6 of those, 1 for each week. I have IBS with constipation. I found the low Fodmap to be more constipation. Any suggestions on food to help with it besides kiwi and chia foods? Yes, absolutely. That when you're on the low Fodmap diet, it can make your constipation worse, and that's how it firms up the diarrhea for the diarrhea people, and they get results quickly. So you do have to layer in that fiber and start with the chia seeds and the kiwi and the oats. That's already a really good hit of fiber, and that's enough for me. And I've been constipated all my life. But also I put into those meal plans on the slides, I put the quinoa. Quinoa is a great source of fiber for us with constipation. It's just a great grain. It's not actually a grain, it's actually a seed. And it's got, because it's a seed, it's got a lot of protein in there as well. So I would add that in. I wouldn't be layering too much more fiber than that. That's a lot of fiber in the day. Make sure you're getting 5 to 6 vegetables a day and your 2 fruits for more fiber, and 8 glasses of water. That solves the problem for nearly everybody with constipation. If it doesn't, look at magnesium citrate, but check with your doctor first to make sure that's all right for you. The other thing you've got to look at are your medications and supplements. They can be very constipating. And I have had some clients whose problems we have not solved until we've either cut back or eliminated a particular medication, obviously after having seen the doctor. And most doctors are quite happy to work with that. They don't want you constipated with a whole new lot of problems like hemorrhoids and fissures and so on. All right, I hope that helped, Sarah. Have you ever heard of IBS causing insomnia with no reflux contraindicated? I don't understand the question. No reflux contraindicated. IBS would only cause insomnia if you'd eaten too close to bed, and then absolutely your sleep will be very disturbed, because if you're still digesting, and our digestion is a bit wacky anyway, and if you're still digesting while you're in bed, you're going to have a very restless night. So make sure you've got that 3 hours before bed, and you eat nothing in the middle of the night. Don't get up unless you've got to go to the toilet quickly, of course. Back into bed, don't go near your kitchen. No reflux. But if you want to clarify that, Lara, about the no reflux contraindicated, please do. I've seen blue diamond crackers, yes or no? I've got no idea what blue diamond crackers are. You would have to tell me the exact ingredients, and then I can say yes or no. IBS indeed. Oats were my salvation. No, they're going to be too much for you. Maybe sprinkle some on something, but I wouldn't be eating a meal of oats, Lynn. Okay, I'm still unsure if soluble or insoluble fiber is good for you. Could you please explain and give any recommendations for fiber intake? All right, the fiber intake, I've just given you the explanation before with the, who was it I answered? This person up here. Sarah. But soluble, insoluble, you need some of both to be healthy. We can digest the soluble much more easily, like in potatoes, etc. The insoluble fiber is fiber that is not digested and comes out still as fiber. And of course, that undigested fiber does ferment in the gut, but we need it for a healthy colon and for good bowel movement. So that's where the balance is with the insoluble fiber. That's our struggle, to get some to keep us healthy, but not so much that it bloats us too much. I mean, the Monash University will tell you this is about quality of life. You've got to find your level of symptoms that means you can live a normal enough life, get on with things. So some bloating is going to be normal because we need that insoluble fiber, and it is going to ferment, and it is going to cause some bloating, and we'll feel it much more than anybody else. But we need both. oops, sorry, no reflux at all, and not eating close to bed, just wondering if IBS could also be contributing. No, at that point I would say not, because the digestion's finished. Your insomnia will be, there are many reasons for it, but what I find with a lot of my clients, because we work on insomnia in the first week of the program, by the way, the first week of the book also has all about sleep routines, how to create them. And the majority of my clients, I find it's just bad routines. And you've created habits, and habits are pathways in the brain, and that will repeat the pattern over and over and over again that you've created with your insomnia. They did research not long ago into elderly people who, you know, have more problems with sleep, getting to sleep, staying asleep. And all of them, once they were put on a routine that they could not break, they could not get out of bed unless they needed a wee, and they went to bed at the same time each night and got up at the same time each morning, whether they were awake or not, they stuck to that routine. Within a week, they were all sleeping through the night. So it can be done, unless there's some underlying physical, mental, medical problem. You can create that routine the same as we can with our kids. You can do it for yourself, and that's all explained in the book. Anyway, thank you for the explanation, Lara. Lynn, a quarter cup only for breakfast. Yes, don't overload your oat intake. Have it for breakfast. And then you want variety. Please, people, variety in your meals. I see it with my clients. I'll have a carrot for breakfast, a carrot for morning snack, a carrot for lunch, and a carrot for afternoon snack. You're going to turn orange. The carotene will turn you orange if you eat that many carrots. We want as many colours and as much variety in our food as possible. If you have oats for breakfast, have a different grain later on in the day, like quinoa if you've got constipation. How do I incorporate a low FODMAP diet into a weight loss program, please? So this obviously is not a weight loss or weight gain program. When you're losing weight or gaining weight, both of those put your body under strain. We don't want this while you're doing an elimination diet. Already you're restricting your foods a lot, so please don't do it during the elimination diet. Do your elimination diet, your reintroduction, get your final diet, and then start looking at the weight loss. You'll probably find that you'll lose some weight naturally, initially on the low FODMAP diet because of the lack of bloating, better bowel movements, etc. But don't do the weight loss until you've got your final diet. And then it's just a matter of keeping those meals really balanced the way I've shown you, but eating a bit less of them all. So it's just less calories in. But don't let yourself get hungry, which can be a problem with weight loss diets. And get hungry, you eat the wrong foods. Almond nut thins, Blue Diamond is brand. I need to know the ingredients. There's no way that I can know if they're safe or not. So if you can type up the ingredients for me, I'll tell you yay or nay. Shala, I take Seroquel and it can make me sort of have seizures if my stomach is empty. Exactly. We don't want our stomach empty anyway. So that's why we're eating every 3 hours. And the protein will last for the 3 hours. So that solves that problem anyway. Just bought the book. Thank you. Well, thank you, Lara. Is there a link with IBS and depression? Yes. And I've written about that in the book. I've written about a lot of links between IBS and other health issues in the book. The book has got everything in it. Believe me, you name it, it's in the book. Yes, there is a link between IBS and depression. The research goes around circles. They don't know if it's having IBS that causes the depression or it's depression that causes IBS. I think both, to tell you the truth. We know that a period of stress that can cause depression can be the trigger for IBS. But also, for heaven's sakes, having IBS is depressing. But on top of that, we also know that those with IBS are low in serotonin and tryptophan, which is part of the mood regulating hormone. serotonin. So we're low in the tryptophan, which is one of the amino acids that makes that up. And if you don't have that mood regulating hormone in balance or enough of it, then you're going to be more prone to depression and anxiety. Once you do the low FODMAP diet and get through to that final diet, that will be balanced again in your meals. Because before you do this, you're actually malnourished. It doesn't matter how healthy you eat or you think you're eating. If that food's not getting digested in the small intestine, but it's going undigested down into the bowel, where it ferments, you're not getting the nutrition from that food and you're malnourished. And so your tryptophan will be low. Another reason to get really quickly through the elimination stage, reintroduction stage, get your final diet so you can balance your food intake and make sure it's being absorbed. We do find that when you are getting the nutrients you need, that a lot of smaller health issues disappear completely. Okay, obviously the bigger major ones, that's going to take longer for them to be impacted by better nutrition. But thank you, Lara, for buying the book. Helen, read breakfast, other options for, I think that's diarrhea, instead of rice flakes, please. Look, any combination of that protein, grain or starchy vegetable, and lower starch vegetable is absolutely fine. The Western world seems to think we should eat cereal for breakfast, and most of it's full of sugar. So we have our cereal, energy levels up, crash mid-morning. Go and get a cake, up the energy levels go, crash again. And by mid-afternoon, you're falling asleep at your desk because you're creating a vicious cycle because you're not getting the protein in there to stretch it out. So the only cereals that I recommend are those kind of pure ones like the oats, the rice flakes, there are quinoa flakes as well, anything that doesn't have the additives in them. Otherwise, just go back to basics like the rest of the world, the majority of the world, which has like a dinner for for breakfast with some protein meat, some vegetables, and a grain or starchy vegetable. I know that seems really weird for the Western world, but you can have some chicken, some zucchini, and a potato for breakfast. And that will be really good nutrition to keep you going into your morning snack. So cereals are tricky. I've mentioned the cereals that I would accept if you were a client. Are added fats optional since they're gut irritants? For example, olive oil in my salad, butter in my morning oat. So fat, as you saw right at the beginning, is one of the macronutrients. We need it. Every cell of our body needs it, or we're going to die. We have to eat fat. It's that simple. But it's a gut irritant, and too much is going to, fat increases the motility of the gut. So increases everything going through and increases the hypersensitivity. So in particular with diarrhea, you do not want to go too high with that, but you will get bloated if you have too much fat. So we need to have fat in every meal. If you eat a piece of steak or chicken or whatever, they naturally have fat in them anyway. Peanut butter is high fat. So just a tip, be very careful. Start with a teaspoon, go to 2 teaspoons, see how much you can tolerate. But definitely a drizzle of olive oil on your salad, a little bit of butter, low FODMAP, perfect. Just each meal, make sure you've just got a little bit of those fats to keep you healthy. Do you have suggestions on where to find FODMAP protein vitamins? I need to be on a prenatal vitamin, thank you. Really tricky with vitamins. A lot of them have high FODMAP inactive ingredients. But everybody with IBS should be on vitamin D. We're all low in that. So please do make sure you're getting your vitamin D. I have a monthly one that I get a prescription for. It's just a little round tablet, which means if it's going to upset my stomach, which it doesn't seem to, it's only once a month instead of every day. Because any of those, as I said, anything that goes in the gut can cause a problem. Any vitamins, minerals, any supplements that are chemically added into pills and tablets and medicines are going to affect you. It's going to be tricky, Sarah, and I would be testing. So I would, as quick as you can, get through the elimination, reintroduction stage, get your final diet, and then test some of those vitamins to see if they're affecting you or not. And congratulations. Lynn, great webinar. Thank you, Suzanne. Have to go. Bye-bye, Lynn. Nice to have you here. You suggested an SSRI for depression. Yes. I didn't say anything about that on here, actually. It depends if you've got constipation or diarrhea, because there are two types of, in the book I write all about this as well. There are two types of antidepressants, and one of them will cause constipation and one of them will cause diarrhea. I'm just having a quick look here. So the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which is the one you've got there, they're better for constipation because they will cause more the diarrhea side of things. Whereas the tricyclic antidepressants are better for people with diarrhea because they're constipating. So if you've got constipation, you don't want to be taking those. But again, just be really, really careful that you do get the right one there. I did have one client who had IBS with constipation, and she was taking the constipating one. And it took a while, but I persuaded her to go back to the doctor. We couldn't get the constipation right. She was having chia seeds, oats, quinoa, kiwi fruit, and it was a bit better, but we couldn't get her past the number 2 on the Bristol stool chart. So I sent her back to the doctor. The doctor was very happy to have her antidepressant. She was young and she'd been on it far too long. And just like that, the constipation was gone, solved the problem. And she didn't have any ill effects from reducing the antidepressant either. If I make my own bread with brown gluten-free flour, is it constipating? Bread, as I say, on the elimination stage, don't have it, especially if you've got the constipation side. I make my own bread, but I make a white bread because I'm always worried about getting too much fiber in some of those breads. Test it, certainly, but test it after the elimination stage of the diet. At least it's chemical-free, fantastic. I'm okay with one slice, as I mentioned, of white bread. I make it myself, made with wheat, and I just counter it with the oats and the chia seeds and things like that to make sure I don't get constipated, which would be the next day. You don't, let's see, gluten-free flour. Yes, gluten-free, make sure it's low Fodmap, not just gluten-free. You mentioned spreading out the fruit. I'm fructose intolerant, and finding fruit in the morning makes me run to the toilet. All right, now you're not fructose intolerant, you malabsorb fructose. Fructose intolerance is actually a medical condition which is extremely dangerous. And some people are born with it, and unfortunately they die young because they can't have any fructose at all. That's what that means. You malabsorb fructose. It's one of my big triggers as well. So I have as you saw, I have a kiwi fruit with my breakfast every single morning. And what it does, together with the oats and the chia seeds, it helps me go to the toilet. And yes, maybe I've got a bit of bloating and a feeling like of urgency, but I'm happy with that because it helps me to go to the toilet. Don't cut out fruit because you malabsorb fructose. Choose those that are lower and choose half the recommended amounts. Like I would only ever have one small kiwi. I'd never have 2. I'd have 10 blueberries, never 20, because that's my big trigger. I am going to suggest that either you're having too much fruit with your breakfast or that it's something else that you're eating with your breakfast that's making you run to the toilet. Apparently, and I learned this in the Monash University course, human beings are terrible at working out what they're intolerant to or malabsorb. Normally, they get it completely wrong. And I found that in my own practice, that people come into the program completely convinced of what they can't eat and what they can eat, and get so shocked when we figure out the triggers and they're completely different to what they believe. I mean, it's so complicated. How are we expected anyway to figure this out? I mean, onions and garlic, for heaven's sakes, they're everywhere. I could never have guessed that that was some of my major triggers. So yes, don't cut things out. Make sure everything else is right, and if necessary, just go to smaller amounts. We're already restricted, so we don't want to restrict further than necessary. Why can't we have chunky peanut butter? I didn't say you couldn't have chunky peanut butter. Now, just with peanut butter, it is very high fat, even though it's low FODMAP, it's 2 tablespoons. So that's why I suggested start at a teaspoon, build to 2 teaspoons, and just see where your fat level is with that. But as long as there are not other ingredients that are high FODMAP, because it's amazing how manufacturers manage to put all sorts of weird stuff into food, yes, you can have chunky peanut butter. I'm fructose and oh no, that's Helen saying the same thing again there. It's all right. I'm doing that hydrogen methane breath testing. Do you think this is accurate? No, Lara, it's not accurate at all. The Monash University has done a research paper on it, and there's no point in doing it. They found, in particular for the fructose and the polyols, that the people on exactly the same diet, they tested 1 week, tested them a week later, and the test results were different. So we know it doesn't work. The one that with reservations that it can work for is lactose, but that's really simple. Try some milk. So you don't need to go and do that to work that one out. But even the lactose one, they give you such a high dose of lactose to drink that it's really unreasonable. For most of us, it's about the level where we react. And as I said before, I consider myself without a problem with lactose, but I would never drink a full glass. Now, when you do that test, they give you the equivalent of 3 glasses of the lactose and 3 glasses of milk, which is just not realistic. So I would say for the hydrogen breath test, it's expensive, it takes up a lot of time and gives you false results that you might then base information off of. I would say absolutely don't do it. Please repeat the 2 types of antidepressants that cause constipation. Only one of them causes constipation. It's the tricyclic antidepressants that cause constipation. The other one, the SSRI, don't. Those are the better ones for constipation. I think I'm getting to the end of the questions. Oh no, Lara, I'm so sorry. Already wasted my $700. Try and get it back. 700. Wow. And I'll tell you what, the places that sell the methane breath test and the hydrogen breath test, the breath test in general, are not going to give up on this easily. They're making a fortune from it, even though now it's been disproved. And it's the same with gluten. We now know that unless you're celiac, people don't have a problem with gluten, they have a problem with the fructans in wheat, barley and rye. But the manufacturers are not going to give up on that anytime soon. So you will see this breath testing advertised and pushed probably for another couple of years before they die off. But it is an absolute waste of your time. See if you can get it back, Clara. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Julie, thank you for sharing your time. Really enjoyed the webinar. Must go now. Yes, I'm probably going to have to go now too. Wait a minute, one more here. Would taking gas X help release trapped gas, or should it be one of the meds I eliminate? I don't know your particular situation, of course. I would be looking at your meds, but I'd be looking, the number one thing to look at is the diet, to make sure it's absolutely accurate with the amounts and the combinations. Super, super important. I see a lot about gas X in my bigger Facebook low FODMAP group. They talk about it all the time. I've never taken anything. I take nothing now except my monthly vitamin D. No supplements, no medications, because I just don't want to complicate things, and I don't need them. Some of you will need things. Some of you will need things for blood pressure, for hearts and so on. Those things you absolutely have to take, but if you don't need to, don't take them. Certainly don't take anything for IBS. They're just band-aids. They're not solving your problem. If gas X works for you, great. But I would say don't get the gas trapped in there in the first place, of course. Will you spell the constipation-causing antidepressant? The tricyclic. Wait a minute, I can write it over here. Just got to get across to my other screen. Tricyclic antidepressants. Tricyclic. Have I written that right? Oh, no, I haven't. There, popping it in the chat so you can see it. Please explain more about malabsorbed fructose. Those with IBS, we malabsorb Fodmaps, and fructose, of course, is one of the Fodmaps. That means that we can absorb some, but we absorb badly. So we can absorb some of the Fodmaps we put into the small intestine. Thank goodness, otherwise we'd die. And that's unfortunately what happens to those who've got fructose intolerance. So we absorb some up to a certain level. Above that level, the rest of it goes off down into the bowel and ferments, causing the gas, the diarrhea, constipation, etc. So we only put into the small intestine the correct foods that aren't too high in FODMAPs and the correct amounts that will all get absorbed in the small intestine. Nothing undigested goes down into the bowel except for maybe a bit of insoluble fiber, which is what we need to keep our colon healthy. So that's what malabsorption is. We absorb badly. We absorb some, but not as much as other people. Hope that explained. Elaine UK, thank you very much, Susan. You've been very helpful. I'm going to try quinoa. Look, when I first tried quinoa, I didn't actually like it very much. It was a little bit bitter, but I knew it was such a good grain for me, and I found ways to eat it, like in a salad with some cooked chicken and some feta cheese and some zucchini chopped up and carrots and a little bit of dressing, just a little bit of lemon juice and oil. Makes a quick, yummy way to eat quinoa. And also, as I mentioned before, that stir fry. I quite like to boil it and then put it quickly into something like a stir fry. So don't give up just because you don't like it too much. Don't just shovel it straight. It's not that brilliant. So there is no definitive testing apart from the elimination diet. No, IBS is a diagnosis of exclusion. So your health practitioner should have tested you for celiac while you were eating wheat. By the way, the celiac test doesn't work if you've already gone off wheat. Colonoscopies just to make sure there's no inflammation, which would indicate colitis, Crohn's, and immune disease of the bowel. No gut infection. They'll test that normally with stools. So they should be doing all the normal testing. When everything comes back negative, then you know it's IBS, or they give you the diagnosis of IBS. And then you do what we know works, the elimination diet, the reintroduction diet, and come out the other end. Now, we haven't today talked anything about lifestyle issues. And we know that you can be eating perfectly on a low FODMAP diet, and if you get stressed or you undersleep, etc., you can get your symptoms back. So I do go extensively into that in the book. Every week we talk about a different part. Week 1, I think, sleep. Week 2 is about stress. We can't eliminate stress. We all have stress in our lives, but we can learn to interrupt the message of stress going from our brain down to our gut. And there are very, very simple techniques for doing that. I think the 3rd week might be exercise and so on. Each of the 6 weeks has got a lifestyle part in the book. So we do have to take care of that as well as the diet, right? They kind of mesh together. But no, there's no testing for IBS. Lara, what a sweetheart. Thank God I found you. What a shame you're not taking clients. Yes, I take clients. Of course I take clients. Who said I don't take clients? I have a full coaching program. That's what I do full time. I have several different coaching programs, the 6-week one-on-one is running continuously. Even when I go on holiday, I take my laptop with me and continue the program going. So Lara, if you need to get in touch with me, there is a 30-minute completely free phone call just so that we can discuss your issues, and then I can tell you about the different options, and it's completely obligation free. But if you need that, go to my website, go to the coaching page, and there's a big button to click on to book the phone call at a time that suits you. You thought that's what you read on my website? Don't think so. If you find where that's written, please let me know. Charla, this is great. Looking forward to the book. Thank you for purchasing it. All right, that seems to be the last of the questions. I'm just going to bring the chat across and make sure there was nothing that people had put in there by mistake. No, it looks like most of you have probably taken them across to the question box. Lynn is saying in Invercargill, New Zealand, Retro Organics has got a great lactose-free one. Thank you for that information, Lynn. There's some sweet things in the chat. Thank you. Can you tolerate raw green peas from Ashley? No, peas are high FODMAP. I mean, you as an individual might be able to tolerate them or tolerate some, because as I said, this is all about levels of tolerance. But they have galacto-oligosaccharides in them, the same as beans have. All right, I think I've caught everything from the chat box, and it really is time for me to have my morning snack. One more. Would stevia be okay? Just watch how it's been made. Stevia does have a terrible process that they put the poor old plant through to make the sweetener, and it involves a lot of chemicals. I would really, really, really suggest a normal sweetener if you need something that's sweet. I mean, I get most of my sweetness from me, but also from fruit. But if you need to, normal white table sugar, maple syrup, golden syrup, brown rice syrup are all safe in small amounts. As I say, stevia is a highly processed sweetener, but I'm not going to say don't have it. Just check the ingredients and how it was made. All right, now I'm going to get rid of that Q&A just in case another comes and I see it and I want to answer. So I'm going to stop now. This has been recorded, as I said, and I'll send out the recording to all of you so you can go back through it again. And just looking at the chat. All right, thank you for your lovely comments. Look, it's been lovely helping you. I hope that has been helpful for you to give you that kind of a template for your meal plan so you can go out there and start doing this. And if you buy my book, I'll love you forever. And do get in touch with me if you buy it with Lo at my email, lofodmapcoach@gmail.com, and tell me, just give me the proof, photocopy or whatever. And I'll put you on the list for that really small group coaching session. Right, I'm going to terminate now. Lovely to see you all in here, and goodbye.